pleased to have you, Sarah, here in San Antonio for an exciting performance of the Bruch Violin Concerto, which is not new to you. In reading your history, gee, this goes back to your 5th, 6th year. You performed it for admission to Juilliard.
I have grown up with the Bruch, and it has a very special place in my heart. You're right. I auditioned for the Juilliard School when I was 5.5, and the Bruch was my audition piece. So it's always had a really, really special place.
The entire performance, or just the first?
Well, no,
movement?
for your
or just an audition.
for your entry audition, you have to play all the scales because you don't know which major or minor scale that the jury is going to ask you to play. So you have to have everything prepared. You have to have an etude prepared at one of the Paganini Caprices, one of the 24.
At 5.5, you're
yeah,
doing that?
and then 2 concertos. So my 2 concertos were the Mozart number 3. The G major and the Bruch, and I played a little bit of both. And you know, it's always had a really special place in my heart because it was the concerto that got me into the school of my dreams.
It's interesting that history is with you, because when I talked to Sebastian Lang-Lessing about you and about the Bruch, he said, "Well, you know, on the one hand, it's a child's piece." And I went, "I'd never heard that before." He said, "But not for children." And how does that, what was he saying? I mean, it's certainly the Brooke scales that you play today are not the Brooke scales you played at 55. I mean, when you were 5.5, obviously.
I hope I'll be playing it when I'm 55.
No, but when you were 5.5,
Yeah.
how you understand the Brooke is a little different.
Well,
than
I think
today.
what Meister was saying is that it's a very youthful piece. You know, it is very youthful and energetic, and there's a lot of passion and drama, but at the end, it's, especially the third moment, it's the entire third moment is one big dance, you know, and in a way very innocent and very childlike in a way. So I think that's what he meant when he said it's, you know, it's very, very youthful. But I also think that when I was 5, you know, I was using a 1/16 size violin, which is a tiny little toy. It looks like a Christmas ornament. You know, it's so small, literally, it could just go on a tree. And you know, the sound that you get from a 1/16 realistically is not great. It's not a Guarneri, so, or Stradivarius. So, you know, I was playing the concerto, and, you know, as a child, if you put in enough hours and you have a good teacher, and, you know, if you have enough support around you and enough natural talent, then yes, you can play the notes. But I think it takes a lot more sort of living and experience and sort of just breathing with the concerto before you feel that you're sort of at the tip of the iceberg learning.
And how appropriate that you're here playing for 20 busloads, 30 busloads of kids from local schools, and they got to hear you play the Bruch Violin
So here's the
Concerto.
thing. Management told me, oh, there are going to be a few kids at rehearsal. Are you okay with an open rehearsal? And I said, yeah, sure, a few kids, no problem. And I walk on stage, and it's literally, essentially, a hall full of children, which is fantastic. You know, we hope for this in every city that we go to.
I hope you touched one student who will pursue his violin.
You know,
Even
I hope
2,
so
you know,
too.
that happens like that.
I hope so, too. I really think it's just exposure. You know, especially at a really young age. It's not so much that they all have to become violinists or musicians.
No.
It's just to be exposed to it.
And to love it.
And to love it and to have an appreciation for the Bruch or the Tchaikovsky or the Rachmaninoff, which they're playing, you know, in the symphony in the second half. And just to have a love for music and to grow with it, I think is just always an
Note to our audience, here we are in the lobby of the Tobin, and what you're hearing in the background is the Rachmaninoff
Exactly.
First Symphony.
Exactly.
And that's okay by me.
Exactly.
You know, in looking over some notes, when Josh Bell was here, he let me hold his Huberman Strad.
Oh.
And I had done the research to explain to the newspapers all the story about Huberman and the Brahms Violin Concerto that was premiered that he premiered,
Right.
I think, on it. And that was so exciting. Here you're playing an instrument that's a 1713. His is 1713. Yours is a 1717 Guarneri.
Yes.
And you've played it for much of your career?
I've had it since I was 15. And I got the Guarneri through Isaac Stern.
Through Isaac Stern?
Yes, when I was still very much a student. And he was one of my mentors and coaches. And he was just, to me, my violin idol. You know, I love that man.
Stern played in this very hall, once removed, I want you to know that,
Really?
when it was the Municipal Auditorium.
Wow.
Many times.
Wow.
As well as Yehudi Menuhin and every
Incredible.
major artist, violinist you've ever you would have ever
That's
listened to
incredible.
on.
No, that's the thing about Mr. Stern, though, because there's so much history, you know, and every time I play the instrument and look at the instrument and touch the instrument, you know, I'm reminded of him. And, you know, it's a big responsibility, you know, because I want to...
Who else owned that instrument of yours?
Oh, I only know of it as far as Mr. Stern, you know, since I got it through him.
Oh, Stern did play that instrument?
Yeah, well, I got it through him, so yes.
I didn't understand through him or that he was the agent that got you the instrument, or that it was his instrument and he said, I want you to play it. Or he had access to it? How does that work?
It was all of the above.
Really?
Well, because I was about 14 or 15 when my hands were finally big enough to use a full size, because I was using all these small violins up until that point. And, you know, I went to see him and I said, I desperately need a full size. Can you help me find one? And he made one phone call. And the next day, literally, we had Stradivariuses and Guarneris and all these amazing instruments flown in from London, from Switzerland, from LA, just everywhere. And he called Carnegie because he pulled a few strings. He could get into Carnegie like anyone can go into.
Note to audience.
Yeah.
Carnegie stands today because of Isaac Stern.
Exactly.
It would be a parking lot or a condo.
He is Mr. Carnegie Hall.
Yes.
He is Mr. Carnegie Hall. And he made a quick phone call, and we went into Carnegie. And right before we took all these instruments, we had like 6 people with us to help us carry like these priceless instruments. We were at his apartment in New York, and he said, give me 1 second. I have a Guarneri in my safe that I think would be perfect for you. And he walked into his safe, and you should have seen his safe. His safe was one of the most beautiful, it's essentially my walk-in closet, except it was fireproof, waterproof, life-proof. And it was literally like a James Bond like safe, you know. And he had all these instruments, and you know, he took out his this Guarneri and said, "I think this might be perfect for you." And he wouldn't show it to me. He wouldn't let me play it in his place. We went to Carnegie, and he mixed them all up, so I had no idea which violin was which. And the one that I fell in love with was this one. And he knew me very, very well. It was exactly the
Sarah,
one that
what a great story.
I love him. I absolutely. He is my musical godfather.
Well, let's talk about Dorothy Delay.
Yes.
Another favorite, I'm sure, of yours. A couple things that I was unaware of as well in doing a little research on you. Both you and Nadia studied with Dorothy Delay.
Oh, a whole bunch of us studied with
Well, I
Miss
know,
Delay.
but I mean, and the tie that I'm making, oh yeah, I mean, her pedagogy is unbelievable, but also her passion, Nadia's passion, I see a lot in you as well, in playing,
thank you.
and the fact that you both also won the Avery Fisher Prize. These are 2 similar careers of 2 great artists.
Well, the thing about Miss Delay, what I loved about her was that she had all these students, just countless amazing students, and she never squashed any of our personal characteristics. Like she, of course, as a teacher, pinpoint things that she wanted us to change, but she would always emphasize that we each had our own individuality, and she would never try to squash that. And you know, if it meant we were passionate players, if we were shy players, if we were, you know, elegant players, whatever it was, she tried to make that our main focus, and then to work on the technique and, you know, the noise, as she used to call it, the noise on the side. But, you know, so that your true personality was untouched.
Well, my favorite violin sonata, you probably have yours too, is the Franck Violin Sonata.
Oh, the Franck is amazing.
Is it one of your favorites
The Franck
too?
is probably, as you say, one of my favorite sonatas of all time.
To me, it's the gate you go through. If you can play Franck's Violin Concerto with the passion that it deserves,
Absolutely.
welcome to your career.
You know what I love about the violin, the Franck Sonata, and you know the story of it, you know, being written for Izai as a wedding present. And what I love about the journey of the whole Franck Sonata is that it has a very unusual structure, whereas you don't have like the standard first, second, third moment, where the first and third moment are the fast movements and the second is a slow one. It has a very beautiful, elegant arch, where the first is the birth, the second is sort of the second movement is this tumultuous sort of teenage ears of anyone's upbringing, where everything is just dramatic and mellow, you know, everything is just roller coaster ride. And then the third is a little bit more settled, and the fourth is just this amazing, joyous celebration of life. And it really is probably one of the most beautiful, beautiful sonatas. And my favorite recording of that sonata actually is not on the violin, but with Jacqueline Dupre playing it on the cello with Maestro Barenboim on the piano. And it is surreal. It is so beautiful. And you would have never thought that it would have sounded so beautiful on the cello, but it works.
I didn't know there was a transcription of
It is.
I'll go listen to it.
It is so beautiful. Very different than the violin, but just it has such sonority on the cello.
And to me, tell me if I'm wrong, it doesn't work if you don't have a pianist who doesn't play on the same frequency as you.
No, so here's the thing. The Franck Sonata is probably one of the most monstrous piano parts that you will ever find in any repertoire. Either it's violin and piano repertoire, cello and piano repertoire, or piano repertoire, whatever it is. The piano part is so massive that you can't really have an accompanist for the Franck Sonata. You need an equal duo partner who is a solid pianist in his or her own right and who can totally hold their own and is a 50-50 partner with you on stage, because it is as much of a piano sonata as it is a violin sonata. And I'm so happy that I went to, one of the most amazing music schools where I have so many piano friends that I could, call up and say, hey, can you do this tour with me? And by the way, Franck Sonata is on the program, and they usually groan and say, and then say, okay, I'll get the music out now. But no, it's a fantastic piece.
Let's tell the audience as well some memories that you have of your performance in Pyongyang and North Korea.
Oh,
on the
North
one hand,
Korea.
I know it was very restrictive of everybody who goes.
Yeah.
You hand over your phone, and you don't talk to anybody about that. Mm-hmm. But you, as a Korean heritage,
Right.
But not a Korean-born gal, what was that? What was that experience like?
I think it was obviously it was a huge honor, to go and to perform there. But I think it meant more to my grandparents, because my grandparents, they grew up in Korea when it was still one country. And then, they both went to Seoul to go to university, and then overnight the border went up, and that was it. So for them, it was, very, very personal.
Did they go to Pyongyang?
No, they couldn't go. They couldn't go. I would have loved if they would have loved to, but the restrictions were.
Was
quite
there a
tough.
recording made of it that you could share with them?
I think it was televised.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was the whole concert was televised, so there is definitely footage of that concert, and it was a joint concert of the North Korean Symphony and 100 musicians from the South, from the KBS orchestra that's based in Seoul. They flew over to the North, and it was a joint concert between the two orchestras. So it was one of those. It was actually probably the first time that I genuinely felt that I was more than a musician. You go into this territory which is so restricted.
You were ambassador.
And you're acting as a musical ambassador. And it was also at a time when talks had just completely stalled and nothing was happening. And this concert was being used as a soft tool, in a way, to sort of massage the talks to get started again. And I just think cultural diplomacy really is a real thing.
That's what the president, I think, has appointed you to do.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, which is an enormous honor. And musical education and cultural diplomacy, I'm a huge believer in that. And, I go to countless countries, just playing concerts, playing for kids, and it's
Note
a
to
lot of fun.
audience, you're looking at a performer who has performed in every place imaginable on the face of the earth, with every major conductor, major orchestra, anywhere. Pretty comprehensive. I want to ask you a question about your violin and your bows.
Yes.
So you have a masculine violin, as you describe it. It does have a different sound than a Strad.
Yes.
But it has there's more than one beautiful sound on the earth. We're hearing it here. How fortunate are we to hear an instrument that is in such wonderful shape and so sonorous as a 1717 instrument like that?
I am extremely fortunate to own this instrument. I am just...
Which bow are you going to use? I noticed that you had the 4 bows that
yes,
you use, and one's for Mozart and one's for...
Well, I carry 4 with me whenever I'm on tour. I collect bows, so I have countless others at home. And it depends on how you feel. It's like cars. If you have a collection of cars, you feel, you get up on Monday and you think, oh, I'll drive the red one. And on Tuesday you think, oh, I'll drive the blue one. It depends on how you feel. And for me, it has to do with the repertoire that I'm playing. As you mentioned, Mozart gets its own bow. Brahms gets its own bow. Bruch gets its own bow because, with every composer, I think you need to go for a different sound, different color, different
Now,
nuance.
I've seen bows that are from the Baroque era.
Yes.
But I didn't know that you could subdivide that so many ways. Is it the hair that's done differently, or is it the wood in the bow itself, or is it the length of the bow? What makes the sound different?
Well, the Baroque bows are art, so it's a completely different way of playing. But all the so-called more modern bows, so I have several picots, which are probably my favorite bows. I have a few Satoris, which they're very, very reliable, very sturdy, as sort of my big concerto bows.
Is that what this is?
I used a Satori for rehearsal yesterday. I used a Picot today, only because my Satori needed a desperate rehair, and there's no time to get a rehair before the concert, so I'm switching over to my Picot, one of my Picots. But I think, bows they're so personal, if anything, even more personal than a great instrument. Because a great violin, regardless if I'm playing it, if you're going to play it, it's going to sound pretty darn good regardless. But with a bow, that changes everything. The bow changes everything.
And how lucky you are to play these romantic era pieces, not the least of which was Goldmark's Violin Concerto,
Yes.
which happens to be one of my favorites.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Not too many
I
people
noticed-
ask for that concerto.
I know, and I think to their detriment. It's
Oh.
an absolutely gorgeous piece of music.
Oh, I
And,
love it. I do.
You enjoy playing it,
I
apparently.
do, and I'm so happy that I got to record it when I did because it's one of. So here's the thing. As a violinist and as a soloist, there are always, I would say, the standard, say, 10 or 15
You're
concertos.
going to play the Mendelssohn 100 million times.
Mendelssohn, Tchaikovsky,
Here's
Brahms,
Brahms.
Sibelius, they're
Like
the
night and
basic
day.
monster war horses that everybody will always ask for, that will always go down well. And then every other season, I try to introduce one interesting new piece that is different. And the Goldmark, believe me, I have tried to be a pioneer for the Goldmark, and I did get to play it in several different halls and with different orchestras before I recorded it, and I'm just glad we got to squeeze it in there because people I've noticed are experimental to an extent, but they like the comfort of what they know. And
They don't know Goldmark. And when they hear it, they'll love it.
exactly. And I think, it's our responsibility as musicians on stage to continuously introduce new things.
Good for you. Good for you. So what is it like to be on the road for 150 concerts or sonatas or 150 nights a year? You are hotels, airports,
It's probably more than
out
that.
to dinner.
It's probably more
I mean,
than that.
where's home? Do you get home?
Home is Philadelphia, and I'm not there very often. I wish I were, but no, it comes with the territory of being a soloist because we're the ones who have to go from city to city, country to country every week, and when you sign up for this life, I sort of wish sometimes that somebody had sat me down and said, it's not just about music. When I started this business, I honestly thought as long as I practiced, as long as I did my work and showed up for the concerts prepared and played well, that would be it. And that the whole life of being a soloist meant, traveling to gorgeous places and exotic countries and playing with amazing musicians and conductors and orchestras. And then you realize very, very quickly that it is a business and you're surrounded by countless agents and managers and assistants and people who take care of you and make sure that your life rolls on in a very, very natural way so that you can just focus on the music. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But it is a business at the end of the day. And with that also comes the fact that you're on the road and traveling and in airports and in airplanes and really wasting so many hours out of your life just waiting.
I have to ask you,
Yeah.
does it get lonely?
It doesn't get lonely because I hardly...
Even though you're around all these people, are you around people you want to be around?
That's a great question. That is a wonderful question. There's really no time to get lonely, surprisingly. And the thing is, I travel a lot of the times with the manager or with an assistant, and a lot of the cities that I go to, I have friends who live there. So I understand what you're saying. Sometimes you're having dinner and they're all strangers. You don't know who half of the people in the table are. But then,
and they all have the same question.
No, but the question, the thing is that even though it's the 1 billionth time that I may be answering them, it's the first time that they're asking me. So I do really respect that. And at the same time, I am a huge believer that you really can make friends everywhere that you go. And, music is this amazing sort of connector,
Well, you are a fabulous artist. We are so lucky to have you in San Antonio again.
That's
this is
very
number
kind
what?
of you.
To San Antonio?
2
4?
or 3,
3?
I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Come back often.
Oh,
have
thank you.
Have a continued, successful,
Thank you.
brilliant career, which you are having.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you next time you're in San Antonio.
I
And
would
thank
love
you for
that.
giving us this time.
Not at all. Such a pleasure. Thank you.